What happened when you finally saw who they really were? I never thought I'd be afraid of my own family, but the night it finally happened, when I saw who they really were, it felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. It started quietly, almost unremarkably, the way most disasters do. I was sitting at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee gone cold, when I overheard them in the living room. My mother's voice, low and urgent. My father's reply, sharper than usual. I shouldn't have been listening, but the tone froze me in place. "She's asking too many questions," Mom hissed. "Let her," Dad said. "She doesn't know enough to be dangerous." Yet, that word yet lodged itself in my chest. I leaned closer, straining to catch the rest. My sister Emily was pacing. I could hear the creak of the floorboards under her restless steps. "What if she finds out what we did?" Emily asked. "What if she tells someone?" Dad sighed heavily. "She won't. She's too naive. Always has been." They were talking about me. I froze, my hand tightening around the mug until I thought it might crack. Something inside me said to walk away, pretend I hadn't heard a thing. But another part, louder and more reckless, wanted answers. I thought about all the late-night arguments, the money that disappeared without explanation, the way Emily sometimes came home with scratches on her arms she couldn't explain. I stepped into the living room. "What exactly am I supposed to not find out?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. The room went silent. My family turned to me like I was a stranger who'd walked in uninvited. Dad's jaw tightened. Emily stopped pacing. Mom forced a smile, but her eyes darted nervously. "You shouldn't sneak around like that," Mom said. "It's rude." "You were talking about me," I pressed. "What's going on?" For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Emily laughed, brittle and too high-pitched. "God, you're paranoid. We weren't talking about you." "Yes, you were." Dad stood. His height always made me feel small, but tonight there was something in his expression that made my skin crawl. Cold, calculated. "You're imagining things," he said. "Go to bed." But I couldn't. I wanted the truth, even if it burned. "Tell me," I demanded. "What did you do?" Emily's eyes flicked to Dad. Mom's fingers twisted the hem of her sweater. And then, in that silence, I understood. They weren't protecting me. They were protecting themselves. Dad moved closer, his shadow swallowing me. "You really want to know?" he asked softly. Every instinct screamed no, but I nodded. He leaned down until I could feel his breath against my ear. "Then don't act so surprised when you don't like the answer." I shivered, not from the words but from the certainty in them. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together the fragments of conversations I'd overheard over the years. Emily's sudden cash, Dad's unexplained nights out, Mom's forced cheerfulness that slipped the moment she thought no one was looking. It all swirled in my head until dawn. By morning, I had convinced myself I'd imagined it. Families fight. Secrets get exaggerated in the dark. Maybe I was being dramatic. But then I found Emily in the garage. She was sitting on the cold concrete floor, arms wrapped around her knees, staring at a box half buried under old blankets. When she saw me, she jumped up too quickly, knocking the box over. Papers spilled out. Receipts. Photos. A phone I'd never seen before. Its screen cracked but still glowing faintly. Emily scrambled to shove everything back inside, but not before I saw one photo that made my stomach lurch. Dad, standing beside a man I didn't recognize, both of them grinning as they held wads of cash. Behind them, a car with its license plates removed. "What is that?" I whispered. Emily's face went pale. "You weren't supposed to see that." She grabbed my wrist hard enough to hurt. "Forget it. Pretend you never came in here." "Emily." Her nails dug into my skin. Her voice trembled, but not from fear, from anger. "If you care about yourself, you'll drop it. Do you understand?" I yanked my arm away, the ghost of her grip still burning into me. She shoved the box into the corner and threw a blanket over it like that could erase what I'd seen. The rest of the day, no one mentioned it. We ate dinner like normal. Laughter forced, conversation shallow. But I couldn't stop thinking about that photo, about the cash, about what Dad had whispered. I finally saw it for what it was, cracks in the mask they'd all been wearing. And once you see the cracks, you can't unsee them. That night, I checked the garage again. The box was gone. I stood in the garage staring at the empty space where it had been, the faint impression in the dust like a phantom outline. They had moved it, hidden it somewhere else. My pulse thudded in my ears as I realized they knew I wasn't letting this go. When I stepped back into the house, the atmosphere had shifted. Mom was at the sink scrubbing a plate that was already spotless. Emily was curled on the couch pretending to read a magazine she held upside down. Dad wasn't there. "Where's Dad?" I asked. Emily didn't look up. Out. The word was heavy, final, like a door slamming. I walked to my room, but I didn't close the door. I needed to hear them. And sure enough, not even 5 minutes later, Mom whispered. She saw too much. Emily muttered something I couldn't catch. Then Mom's voice again, sharp and anxious. "Don't tell your father I slipped. He'll lose it." That night, I kept my shoes on and a bag packed under my bed. Something deep inside me said I might need to run. The next morning, Dad acted normal. Too normal. He buttered his toast with exaggerated calm, asked about my classes, even made a joke about the weather. But his eyes didn't match the words. They tracked me unblinking like a predator deciding when to strike. I played along, smiling weakly, answering every question, but inside, I was unraveling. After breakfast, I slipped out of the house and walked to the library. It was the only place where I felt invisible, tucked between shelves of books where silence was expected. I pulled out my notebook and started writing down everything, every overheard conversation, every suspicious receipt, every bruise I'd seen on Emily's arm. My hand cramped, but I kept going. If something happened to me, someone needed to know the truth. That's when I felt a shadow fall across the page. Doing homework? It was Mr. Kellerman, the old librarian. He peered down at my frantic scribbles. Something like that, I muttered, snapping the notebook shut. His eyes lingered, too perceptive for comfort. But he just nodded and shuffled away. I stayed until closing, then braced myself for the walk home. The sun was already dipping low, painting the sky in bruised purples. Every step felt heavier, like I was walking towards something I couldn't avoid. When I opened the front door, the smell hit me first. Cigarette smoke. But no one in my family smoked. The living room light was dim, a single lamp casting long shadows across the walls. And there he was. A man I'd never seen before, sitting in Dad's chair, cigarette dangling between his fingers. His face was weathered, scars slashing across his jaw. His eyes, pale and flat, flicked to me as if sizing me up. Evening, he said casually, exhaling smoke toward the ceiling. My stomach dropped. Emily sat rigid on the couch, her arms crossed tightly. Mom hovered in the corner, wringing her hands. Dad stood near the window, arms folded, like a guard. Who is this? I asked. No one answered. The man chuckled. Smart kid, wants to know names. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Names aren't important. What matters is family loyalty. And from what I hear, you're not pulling your weight. My throat went dry. I looked at Dad. What is he talking about? But Dad didn't answer. The stranger stubbed out his cigarette in Dad's ashtray, when had we gotten an ashtray, and stood slowly. You've seen things you weren't meant to see, heard things you weren't meant to hear. That puts you in a difficult position. Emily's eyes darted to mine, wide and glassy. For a second, I thought I saw regret there. Then she looked away. What position? I whispered. The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You're either in this family, all the way, or you're out. And being out isn't safe. He walked past me toward the door, his boots heavy on the floorboards. Before leaving, he clapped Dad on the shoulder. Keep her in line, or I will. The door slammed, rattling the picture frames on the wall. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My world had just tilted on its axis. What was that? I finally choked out. Dad's face was stone. A friend, and you'd do well to forget you met him. But I couldn't forget. Not the scar on the man's jaw, not the way Mom trembled, not the way Emily wouldn't meet my eyes. That night, as the house went quiet, I lay awake listening to every creak, every whisper. The stranger's words looped in my head. In or out? But what did being in mean? And what happened to those who were out? The next morning, the box was back in the garage. But this time, the lid was open, as if daring me to look again. And when I did, what I found inside made me realize my family wasn't just hiding secrets. They were hiding crimes. The box wasn't just filled with papers and receipts this time. There were things inside that turned my blood to ice. Stacks of cash wrapped in rubber bands, a small handgun tucked between folded jackets, and photographs, dozens of them spread out like a grotesque collage. At first, I thought they were just random pictures of cars, buildings, people in parking lots. But as I looked closer, I realized these were surveillance shots. Taken secretly, some from far away, others up close. Some were of strangers, and some weren't. One photo was of my best friend, Mia, walking home from school. Another showed her little brother playing in their yard. My hands shook as I flipped through the pile. Every photo was marked with dates and times. Routes. Routines. This wasn't just evidence of petty crime. This was stalking. Targeting. I shoved the photos back in the box, my heart hammering. Who was taking these pictures? My dad? That scarred man from last night? The floor creaked behind me. I spun, clutching the lid like a shield. Emily stood there, arms folded. Her expression was unreadable. You weren't supposed to see those, she said flatly. What is this? My voice cracked, panic leaking through. Why do you have pictures of Mia? Of her brother? Emily stepped forward, her face pale but determined. It's business. That's all you need to know. Business? My voice rose. That's stalking. That's God. That's criminal. What the hell are you involved in? Emily's eyes narrowed. Watch your tone. You can't seriously expect me to stay quiet about this. Her lips twitched, almost like she was about to laugh, but her eyes were dead. Oh, I don't expect you to. I know you will, because you don't have a choice. Like hell I don't. Her expression hardened. If you say a word, they won't just come after you. They'll come after Mia. You want her little brother to make it to his next birthday? Then shut your mouth. The words hit me like a slap. My chest caved in. Breath caught in my throat. She leaned closer, her whisper sharp as broken glass. This is bigger than you. You think you can run to the cops? The cops eat out of Dad's hand. They'll laugh in your face. And by the time you realize no one's coming, it'll be too late. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. Why are you doing this? I asked. You're my sister. Something flickered in her eyes. Shame, maybe, but it was gone in an instant. Because family comes first. No, I whispered. This isn't family. This is a nightmare. Emily grabbed my arm before I could leave, her nails digging into my skin. Don't make it worse for yourself. You think that's scary? You haven't met the others. Stay quiet, or you'll find out exactly what happens to people who don't. I yanked my arm free and bolted. I didn't stop until I was blocks away, leaning against a lamppost, gasping for breath. My whole body shook. I wanted to scream, to run straight to Mia and warn her. But Emily's threat replayed in my head. They'll come after Mia. The choice was unbearable. Keep quiet and let this continue, or speak up and risk the people I loved most. For days, I went through the motions like a ghost, pretending to be normal at school, pretending I hadn't seen the truth at home. Every time Mia laughed at something stupid I said, I saw that photo of her walking home. Every time her brother waved at me, I imagined those pale eyes watching him from the shadows. At home, the tension was suffocating. Dad was gone more often. Mom flinched at sudden noises. Emily watched me constantly, her stare a silent warning. Then one night, I heard a noise outside my window. I pulled back the curtain, heart pounding. A car idled across the street. Not our car, not a neighbor's, just there. Lights off, engine humming low. Through the windshield I caught a glimpse of that scarred man, his head tilted, like he was smiling at me from the dark. I dropped the curtain and stumbled back, my chest heaving. The car stayed there for hours, watching, waiting. By the time the engine finally revved and the taillights disappeared, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wasn't just trapped in my family's secrets anymore. I was part of them. After that night, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on me. Even when the street outside was empty, I felt watched. The curtains stayed drawn. My bedroom door stayed locked. But locks didn't feel like protection anymore. I tried to tell myself it was paranoia, that I was imagining the scarred man's stare. But then I started noticing small things out of place. My notebooks shifted. My backpack unzipped when I was sure I'd closed it. My phone battery draining faster than usual. Someone had been in my room. The realization hit like ice water down my spine. If they could come in without me knowing, then nowhere was safe. I confronted Emily first. She was in the kitchen scrolling on her phone, pretending like nothing was wrong. Were you in my room? I asked. She didn't even look up. Don't flatter yourself. You're not that interesting. I slammed my hand on the counter. Don't lie to me. Her head snapped up, eyes blazing. Keep your voice down. Answer me. For a moment, something dark flickered across her face. Then she smirked. What does it matter? It's not your room. It's the family's house. Nothing in there belongs to you. I wanted to hit her, to shake the truth out of her. Instead, I turned and stormed out before the fury boiling in my chest made me do something I couldn't take back. That night, I hid my notebook at school, wedged between the shelves in the back corner of the library. At least there, it felt out of reach. The next evening, Dad called a family meeting. His voice was calm, but there was a sharpness under it that set every nerve in me on edge. We gathered in the living room, me, Emily, Mom perched nervously on the edge of the couch, and Dad standing like a judge about to pass sentence. You've been asking questions, he said, his eyes locked on me. I swallowed hard, because no one will tell me the truth. His jaw flexed. The truth is simple. Family takes care of family. That means loyalty, silence, obedience. You've been slipping on all three. I'm not part of this, I whispered. His face hardened. You are, whether you like it or not. Why? The word tore out of me. Why drag me into this? I didn't ask for it. I didn't. Because you're blood. He cut in, his voice like steel. And blood doesn't get to choose. Silence fell heavy over the room. Then Emily laughed softly. She still thinks she has a choice. That's cute. I turned to Mom, desperate. Say something. You know this isn't right. But Mom wouldn't look at me. Her hands twisted in her lap, knuckles white. Your father's right, she whispered. We survived together. Or not at all. The betrayal cracked something inside me. Dad's gaze pinned me. So, I'll ask you once. Are you with us? My mouth went dry. Every instinct screamed to say no, but the scarred man's threat echoed in my head. Being out isn't safe. Yes, I said finally. My voice was thin, brittle. Dad's eyes narrowed, studying me for cracks. Emily smirked like she'd already won. Good, Dad said, because tomorrow, you prove it. I froze. Prove it how? But he didn't answer. He just walked away, leaving me with that awful silence. The next morning, Dad drove us in silence. Emily sat beside me, grinning like she knew a secret. My stomach twisted tighter with every mile. We pulled into a parking lot behind an old strip mall, empty except for a single beat-up sedan. The scarred man leaned against it, arms crossed, cigarette glowing between his fingers. My pulse spiked. This is it, Dad said. He turned to me, his expression unreadable. You want to be family? You show us today. The scarred man opened the car's trunk. Inside were more stacks of cash, thick envelopes, a black duffel bag. Emily nudged me hard. Go on, don't keep him waiting. My legs felt like concrete as I stepped out. The scarred man's eyes bored into me, pale and unblinking. Pick it up, he said, jerking his chin toward the bag. I stared at it. My heart thundered so loud I could barely hear. What's in it? He smiled faintly. You don't want to know. I wanted to run, to scream, to fight, but Dad's eyes were on me, cold and merciless. Mom wasn't there to intervene. Emily looked almost gleeful. My hands shook as I reached for the bag. The moment my fingers touched the rough fabric, I knew. Whatever was inside would change me forever. The bag was heavier than I expected. The weight of it jolted through my arms, grounding me in the horror of what I was holding. Good, the scarred man said, his voice low, approving. Now carry it. Where? My throat was so dry the word barely came out. To the blue door. He pointed at the back of the strip mall, a single metal door half hidden in shadow. And don't drop it. I looked at Dad, begging silently for an explanation, for some hint that this wasn't what it seemed. But his face gave nothing away, just that cold authority he always wore when he wanted obedience. Emily leaned against the car, smirking. Go on, little sister. Time to grow up. Every step toward the door felt like a step off a cliff. The bag pulled at my shoulders, the strap digging into my skin. My mind raced what was inside. Drugs? Weapons? Evidence of something even worse? When I reached the door, I hesitated. Knock. The scarred man barked. I raised my hand, but it shook so badly I had to press it flat against the cold metal to steady myself. Then, with 3 weak raps, I knocked. The door opened almost immediately. A man with a shaved head and tattoos curling up his neck stared at me. His eyes dropped to the bag. He snatched it from my hands without a word and slammed the door shut. I stumbled back, my arms tingling with a sudden lightness. Not bad, the scarred man said. He flicked his cigarette into the gutter. She's got potential. Relief rushed through me, but it curdled just as quickly. Potential for what? Back at the car, Dad clapped my shoulder, the weight of his hand heavy and suffocating. See? Family work isn't so hard. I wanted to scream that it wasn't work, it was crime, but the words stuck in my throat. On the ride home, Emily hummed along with the radio, smug and satisfied. Dad said nothing, eyes fixed on the road. I sat in the back, staring out the window, trying not to shake. That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the tattooed man stare, felt the bag's weight again. And I realized something terrifying. They'd pulled me in, just like that. I was complicit. The next day at school, I couldn't focus. Mia noticed immediately. You look like hell, she said, plopping down beside me in the cafeteria. What's going on? I wanted to tell her everything, to unload the poison that was rotting me from the inside. But Emily's words came back sharp and cruel. You want her little brother to make it to his next birthday? So I forced a smile, just tired. Mia frowned, unconvinced. You know you can talk to me, right? Yeah, I lied. After school, I lingered at the library, pulling my hidden notebook from the shelf. I added every detail about the bag, the scarred man, the blue door. My hand shook as I wrote, but I didn't stop. The notebook was all I had left, my one piece of truth in a house built on lies. When I finally got home, Dad was waiting at the table. The notebook wasn't where I'd left it in my backpack. My heart stopped. Sit, he said. I sat, my legs weak. He slid something across the table. My notebook. Cold dread flooded me. You think we don't notice? His voice was quiet, almost calm, which made it even worse. You think you can play spy in my house? My voice cracked. It's just notes. For school. Dad flipped it open, scanning the pages. Notes? These look more like accusations. He read aloud. Scarred man, parking lot, bag delivery. His eyes snapped to mine. You really think this is smart? My stomach churned. I just needed to understand. He leaned closer, his face inches from mine. There's nothing to understand. You're either with us or against us. And if you're against us, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. Emily appeared in the doorway, arms folded, smirking. Mom hovered behind her, pale and silent. Dad closed the notebook and slid it back toward me. Burn it. What? You heard me. Burn it. Tonight. And don't ever write about this again. I stared at the notebook, my lifeline, my only proof. If I destroyed it, I'd have nothing left. But Dad's eyes told me what would happen if I didn't. That night, I stood in the backyard with a box of matches. The notebook trembled in my hands. My throat burned as I struck the match and watched the first page catch fire. The flames spread quickly, devouring my words, my truth, my only chance. Emily watched from the porch, arms crossed. Good girl, she said softly. The ashes curled into the night sky, carried away by the wind. And with them, the last piece of who I used to be. I thought burning the notebook would free me from suspicion. That maybe if I did what Dad asked, they'd back off and I could figure out an escape later. But I was wrong. Destroying it only made me more valuable to them because now they knew I was scared enough to obey. Things escalated fast. 2 nights later, Dad shook me awake in the dark. Get dressed. Now. His tone left no room for hesitation. I pulled on jeans and a hoodie, heart thudding, and followed him outside. Emily was already in the car, smirking like she'd been waiting for this. We drove for nearly an hour, the city lights fading into industrial sprawl. Finally, we pulled into a warehouse lot. Rusted fences, burnt-out street lamps, the kind of place no one would notice if you screamed. Inside, the scarred man was waiting. A few others were there, 2 hard-eyed men who barely glanced at me. On a table in the center of the room sat another duffel bag. "This one's yours," the scarred man said, pushing it toward me. My stomach nodded. "What's in it?" Emily laughed. "Do you ever stop asking questions?" The scarred man's lips twitched. "Money, mostly. Some papers. You just deliver it. Simple." "Where?" My voice shook. He rattled off an address, some run-down apartment complex I vaguely recognized. "You've got 30 minutes, Dad said. Go. Go. Alone." I stared at him, horrified. "I can't." "You will." His eyes cut through me like knives. The bag was shoved into my hands. Heavy. My arms trembled under its weight. Emily leaned in as I left. "If you screw this up, don't bother coming back." The drive to the complex was a blur of headlights and pounding heartbeat. My thoughts spiraled. What if I was being set up? What if the cops stopped me and I was left holding the evidence? What if whoever I was delivering to decided they didn't like the look of me? The complex was worse than I remembered. Windows boarded up, graffiti scrawled across doors, the smell of rot in the air. I climbed the cracked stairs to the second floor, every creak of the wood echoing in my chest. The door number matched. I knocked. It opened a crack. A pair of eyes peered out, bloodshot and wary. Then the door swung wider, revealing a gaunt man in a torn hoodie. He snatched a bag, unzipped it, and rifled through the contents. "Yeah?" he muttered. "Looks right." He shoved an envelope into my hands. "For them." Before I could react, the door slammed shut. I stood frozen in the hallway, clutching the envelope, my whole body buzzing with adrenaline. When I got back to the warehouse, the scarred man took the envelope. Dad nodded once, like I'd passed some twisted test. "See?" Emily said, smirking. "She's useful after all." Useful. That word made me want to vomit. On the ride home, Dad didn't speak. Emily hummed softly, smug satisfaction dripping from every note. When we pulled into the driveway, Dad finally turned to me. "You did good tonight. Remember that feeling. Family takes care of family." I wanted to scream that it wasn't family, it was crime. It was manipulation. It was hell. But I swallowed the words, because I wasn't ready to find out what would happen if I stopped pretending. Days blurred into weeks. Deliveries became more frequent. Sometimes it was bags, sometimes just envelopes, but always the same sick ritual. And every time, Emily's grin got wider, like she enjoyed watching me sink deeper. I started avoiding Mia. I couldn't stand her questions, her concern. She deserved better than the danger that followed me like a shadow. But one afternoon, she cornered me in the library. "What's going on?" she demanded. "You're jumpy. You look exhausted, and you keep blowing me off. Talk to me." I almost broke. The truth burned my throat, desperate to spill out. But then I remembered the photos of her and her little brother in that box. Remembered Emily's threat. "I can't," I whispered. Mia's eyes softened. "Then let me help." I shook my head, tears stinging. "You don't understand. If you help me, you'll get hurt." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away and fled before she could see me cry. That night, I lay awake listening to the creaks of the house, the muffled voices downstairs, and I realized something chilling. They weren't testing me anymore. They were training me. And if I didn't find a way out soon, I wasn't going to just see who they really were. I was going to become one of them. I didn't recognize myself anymore. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw the same haunted eyes I'd once noticed in Emily, the eyes of someone carrying secrets too heavy to tell. But the worst part wasn't the fear. It was the numbness creeping in. The first time I delivered a bag, I'd nearly collapsed from panic. Now, I barely flinched. That terrified me more than anything. One night, I overheard Dad and the scarred man in the garage. "She's coming along," the scarred man said. "She's green," Dad replied. "But she'll learn." "They all do." "She better," the man muttered, "because once you're in, there's no out." I pressed my back to the wall, heart hammering. I didn't want to come along. I didn't want to learn. But I also didn't know how to escape. The answer came in the most unexpected way. It was Emily. One evening, she cornered me in the hallway, her face pale, her eyes darting nervously. "We need to talk." I braced myself for another threat, but her voice shook. "I messed up." "What do you mean?" She glanced over her shoulder before pulling me into her room. She shut the door and turned up her music loud. "I took some money," she whispered. "Skimmed off the top. Just a little." But they noticed. My stomach dropped. "Emily." I thought I could get away with it. God, I needed it. I was going to leave, okay? Just disappear. But now she broke off, her hands trembling. For the first time, I saw her not as the cruel sister who smirked at my fear, but as someone just as trapped. "What are they going to do?" I asked. Her lips parted, but before she could answer, a heavy knock rattled the front door. Emily went white. We crept down the stairs. Dad was already at the door, his posture rigid. The scarred man stood outside, cigarette glowing in the dark. Two others flanked him, both broad-shouldered, their faces unreadable. Dad stepped aside, and they walked in like they owned the place. My chest tightened. This wasn't a visit. It was a reckoning. The scarred man's eyes swept the room before settling on Emily. "We've got a problem." Emily's hands balled into fists. "I don't know what you're talking about." He smiled, cold and humorless. "Don't play dumb. Money doesn't just disappear." Dad's jaw clenched. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice low, dangerous. Emily swallowed hard but said nothing. The silence was enough. The scarred man stepped closer, looming over her. You know the rules. You steal from us, you pay the price. Emily's bravado cracked. Her eyes darted to me, pleading silently. No, I said before I could stop myself. She didn't do it. The scarred man turned slowly, his pale eyes narrowing on me. You're saying you did? The room tilted. I hadn't meant to say that, but if I didn't, Emily was done for. Yes, I forced out. It was me. A heavy silence fell. Dad's expression hardened, but he didn't correct me. He let the lie hang in the air like a noose tightening around my neck. The scarred man studied me for a long, agonizing moment. Then he nodded. Then you'll fix it. How? My voice barely worked. His smile was razor sharp. There's a man who owes us. You're going to collect. My stomach lurched. Collect what? Whatever he's got, he said simply. Money, jewelry, doesn't matter. You make it right, or you both pay. Emily's hand shot out, gripping my arm. Don't. But Dad's glare silenced her. She'll do it. The scarred man chuckled. Good. Tomorrow night, we'll pick you up. And just like that, it was decided. After they left, Emily collapsed onto the couch, shaking. Why did you do that? Because they were going to kill you, I hissed. She buried her face in her hands. You don't understand. Once you do this, you're in. For real. There's no way back. Her words clung to me all night, wrapping around me tighter than any blanket. The next evening, the scarred man's car pulled up to the curb. I slid into the back seat, my legs weak, my hands damp with sweat. Emily stood on the porch watching, her face pale and stricken. The scarred man glanced at me in the rearview mirror. Tonight, he said, you prove your family. The city lights blurred past as we drove, my reflection in the window ghostly and unrecognizable. I thought I'd already seen the worst of them, but I was about to find out how far they'd really go, and how far I'd be pushed to follow. The car smelled of stale smoke and leather. I sat rigid in the back seat, every muscle clenched. The scarred man drove, humming off-key, while the two others murmured quietly in the front. Their voices blended with the hum of the engine, low and menacing. We stopped outside a sagging duplex on the edge of town. The porch light flickered weakly, throwing jagged shadows across peeling paint. This is it, the scarred man said, killing the engine. He turned, his pale eyes catching mine in the dark. You go and you get what's owed. No excuses. My pulse thundered. What if he doesn't? Then make him. He cut in, his tone final. My hands shook as he shoved a small revolver into them. Cold metal. Heavy. I can't, I stammered. You can, he said calmly, or your sister pays. The threat landed like a blade. Emily's terrified face flashed in my mind. I tightened my grip on the gun even though my stomach lurched. One of the men knocked on the door, then stepped aside. Moments later, it creaked open. A middle-aged man with thinning hair and bloodshot eyes squinted out. What the hell do you want? He muttered. The scarred man's smile was razor thin. You know what we want. She's here to collect. The man's eyes flicked to me, confusion giving way to recognition. She's just a kid. Not anymore, the scarred man said. My chest squeezed. I raised the gun, my hands trembling so violently I thought I'd drop it. Just, give me what you owe. The man stared at me for a long, heavy moment. Then he let out a bitter laugh. So this is how far he's fallen, sending children to do his dirty work. Behind me, I heard the click of a lighter, the scarred man, lighting another cigarette. Tick-tock! The man cursed under his breath, then shuffled back inside. Moments later, he returned with a crumpled wad of bills and a gold watch. He shoved them into my free hand. There, take it, and tell your father he's a coward. Father, my head snapped up. What? The scarred man flicked his cigarette into the yard. Enough talking, let's go. But my ears were still ringing with that word. Father, did he mean my father? Back in the car, I clutched the money and watched like they were burning me. The scarred man smirked. Not bad. Maybe you're tougher than you look. I wanted to scream, to hurl the gun out the window. Instead, I sat in silence, numb, as the city lights blurred past. When we got home, Dad was waiting in the living room. Emily hovered at the edge of the couch, pale and tense. The scarred man tossed the money and watch onto the table. She did it. Dad's eyes shifted to me. For a flicker of a second, something like pride crossed his face. Then it was gone. Good, he said simply. She's ready. Ready for what? I didn't ask. I just stumbled upstairs and locked my door, clutching the revolver still warm in my pocket. They hadn't taken it back. That night, sleep didn't come. I kept replaying the man's words. Tell your father he's a coward. Who was he? How did he know Dad? What did it mean? The next morning, Emily slipped into my room before school. Her eyes were wide, frantic. What happened last night? I shook my head. Don't ask. She grabbed my wrist. I heard them talking. They're planning something bigger. Not just deliveries. Something that could get you killed. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? She glanced at the door, then leaned closer. I don't know all of it, but I heard the scarred man say your name. Not mine, not Dad's, yours. A chill spread through me. They weren't just training me, they were setting me up. That evening, I went to the garage, desperate for answers. I dug through the shelves, through toolboxes, through old boxes of junk. And then I found an old photo album shoved behind a stack of paint cans. Inside were pictures of Dad, younger, with the scarred man, with other men I didn't recognize, posing in front of cars, holding stacks of cash, even raising glasses of whiskey like they were celebrating. My chest tightened. This wasn't new. This wasn't something Dad had fallen into recently. He'd been in it for years, maybe forever. And I finally understood. The man last night hadn't just called Dad a coward. He'd called him out. My father wasn't just part of this world, he built it. And now, he was dragging me into the wreckage. I slammed the album shut, my hands shaking so hard the pages rattled. Footsteps creaked behind me. Dad's voice was calm, almost gentle. I was wondering when you'd find that. I turned slowly, my heart in my throat. He stood in the doorway, blocking the exit, his eyes unreadable. Now, he said softly, we need to talk about your future. He stepped into the garage, closing the door behind him with a deliberate click. The sound echoed, final, like a cell door locking. I clutched a photo album against my chest, my pulse hammering. My future? I managed, my voice thin. Dad nodded, his eyes fixed on me. You've proven yourself. Last night sealed it. You've got instincts, nerves, you're ready. Ready for what? He took a slow step closer, to take over. The words hit like a blow. I shook my head. No, I'm not doing this. I don't want any part of it. His expression didn't change, but his voice dropped to a dangerous calm. You don't get to want, kid. You're blood. And blood keeps the legacy alive. Legacy. The word burned in my ears. I thought of the photos, the stacks of cash, the cars, the scarred man always at his side. This wasn't a legacy. It was rot. I forced myself to stand tall, though my legs trembled. If you think I'm going to live like you, you're wrong. Dad's mouth twitched, almost like a smile. But it wasn't amusement, it was pity. You still think you've got choices. That's sweet. But choices are for outsiders. You're in. You proved that when you took the bag. When you raised that gun. Every step you've taken since has tied you tighter. You think you can just walk away? I didn't answer. Couldn't. He came closer. Close enough that I could smell the smoke clinging to his jacket. His voice lowered. This family doesn't survive on dreams. It survives on loyalty. Sacrifice. You've been sheltered. Protected. Now it's your turn to protect us. I never asked for this, I whispered. He leaned down, his eyes cold steel. Neither did I. The words hung heavy between us, and for the first time, I saw it not just cruelty, but exhaustion. A man so deep in the pit he'd forgotten there was ever a way out. But that didn't mean I had to follow. When he finally left the garage, I stayed frozen, clutching the album, my mind racing. I couldn't keep pretending, not anymore. If I didn't find a way out now, I never would. That night, I crept into Emily's room. She sat on her bed, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the wall. They want me to take over, I said quietly. Her eyes snapped to mine, wide with fear. You can't. You'll never get out if you do. I know. I sat beside her, lowering my voice. So we run. She let out a bitter laugh. Run where? You think they won't find us? You think Dad won't hunt us down himself? Then we make them think we're still here, I said, surprising myself with the words. We fake it, long enough to get away. She stared at me like I'd lost my mind, but then her face softened, and I saw the faintest glimmer of hope. Do you really think we can? She whispered. I swallowed hard. We have to. The next days blurred into planning. Emily stole cash from the envelopes before deliveries. I squirreled away food and clothes. We whispered in shadows, careful not to draw attention. Every glance from Dad felt like a spotlight, every smirk from the scarred man like a warning. Then, one night, the opportunity came. Dad and the scarred man left for a meeting. Mom was asleep on the couch, an empty wine glass dangling from her hand. Emily and I slipped out the back door, hearts pounding, bags clutched tight. The night air was cold, sharp with freedom. For the first time in months, I let myself believe we might actually make it. We made it 3 blocks before headlights cut across us. The scarred man's car. Emily froze. Oh God. Run. I grabbed her arm and pulled. We sprinted down alleys, lungs burning, feet slapping against concrete. Behind us, the engine roared, tires screeching. We burst into the train yard, weaving between rusted cars. My chest heaved, vision swimming. Emily stumbled, nearly falling, but I dragged her up. The scarred man's voice echoed through the yard. You think you can run? There's no running from family. We ducked into an abandoned freight car, collapsing in the shadows. My hands shook violently, clutching the revolver I'd hidden in my bag. Emily's eyes locked on it wide. You brought that? I had to. Outside, footsteps crunched on gravel. Getting closer. Emily grabbed my arm, her whisper frantic. If they catch us, it's over. They'll make you do it. They'll make you take his place. The footsteps stopped just outside. Silence pressed in, suffocating. Then the scarred man's voice, low and taunting. Come out, little heir. Daddy's waiting. Emily squeezed my hand, tears streaming down her face. What do we do? My grip tightened on the revolver. For the first time, the fear gave way to something colder. Resolve. We end this, I whispered. The footsteps moved again, slow, deliberate. Closer. And I raised a gun, ready for whatever came through that door. The metal groaned as the freight car door slid open. Cold night air rushed in, carrying the stink of diesel and cigarette smoke. The scarred man stepped inside first, his pale eyes glinting in the darkness. Behind him, two others followed, their shadows long and jagged across the floor. He spotted me instantly, crouched in the corner with the revolver raised. His grin spread slow, deliberate. "Well, look at you," he drawled, finally holding it like you mean it. Emily's breath hitched beside me. My arms shook, but I kept the gun steady, the barrel pointed at his chest. "Stay back," I warned. He chuckled. "Or what? You'll shoot me? We both know you don't have it in you." The others spread out, blocking the exit. We were trapped. "You don't get it, do you?" He continued, his voice low, coaxing. "This isn't a prison. It's an inheritance. Your father's built something that lasts. You think you're running from a curse, but you're running from power. Blood like yours isn't meant to disappear, it's meant to rule." "Rule?" My voice cracked. "You ruin people's lives. You destroy everything you touch." His smile faded. "That's survival, and soon, it'll be yours to carry." I felt Emily trembling beside me, clinging to my sleeve. My own fear pulsed hot in my chest, but under it was something harder, sharper. I wasn't going to be him. "Last chance," I said, forcing steel into my voice. "Let us walk away." For a beat, silence stretched thin. Then he shook his head, almost pitying. "Wrong answer." He lunged. The gun went off. The recoil jolted through my arms, deafening in the metal car. The scarred man staggered, clutching his shoulder, a look of pure shock flashing across his face. "You little," he snarled, stumbling forward. I fired again. This time, he collapsed. The others froze, eyes wide, before scrambling back out of the car. Smoke curled from the barrel. My hands shook violently, but I didn't drop the gun. Not until Emily sobbed her through the air. "You shot him," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Oh my God, you shot him." "He was going to kill us," I said, my voice raw. We didn't wait. We ran, out of the train yard, through the sleeping streets, until our legs gave out. We collapsed behind a dumpster, gasping, tears streaming down both our faces. For the first time in months, I felt the weight shift. The fear was still there, yes, but underneath it was something else. Freedom. But freedom came with a cost. The police found the scarred man's body the next day. The story spread fast: violent altercation, unknown suspects, investigation ongoing. Dad didn't mention it, but his eyes told me everything. He knew, and worse, he knew it was me. For days, the house was silent. No lectures, no threats, just a suffocating quiet. Until one evening, Dad came into my room. He stood in the doorway, his shadow long and dark. "You made your choice," he said softly. I clenched my fists. I chose to live. His eyes searched mine for something: weakness, regret, maybe even pride. But whatever he was looking for, he didn't find it. Finally, he nodded. "Then you're not my problem anymore." And just like that, he turned and left. I didn't sleep that night. Emily and I packed what little we could carry, and by dawn, we were gone. We didn't go far at first: cheap motels, bus stations, borrowed couches, always moving, always watching our backs. But with every mile we put between us and that house, the air felt lighter. Mia found out eventually. I told her pieces, never the whole truth. Just enough to explain the shadows in my eyes, the way I jumped at every noise. She hugged me anyway, whispered that I wasn't alone. Sometimes I still dream of that freight car, the smoke, the gunshot, the way the scarred man's eyes widened in shock. I wake up drenched in sweat, the echoes of his words rattling in my skull. Once you're in, there's no out. But he was wrong. There is an out. It's messy, bloody, painful, but it exists. I found mine the night I finally saw them for who they really were. Not family, not protectors, not people to admire or follow. Just predators hiding behind the word blood. And when the mask slipped, when I saw the monsters they'd always been, I did the only thing left to do. I survived. That was the day I stopped being their daughter, and the day I finally became myself.